Kate Sterling, and excitingly, a very special guest today. So today I am really happy and excited to have Victoria Phipps, MBE, to the podcast and on the podcast. Victoria is a photographer, a mum, and the host of Mums Mean Business podcast, a passionate advocate for capturing family and life moments on film, and I'm assuming on digital kind of assets too. I'll have to ask about that. Victoria is a true advocate for creating career, business and life around your family rather than having to squeeze the fulfillment of life in the gaps that are left. A trailblazer for mums in the messy middle of business, her work now looks to capture the beautiful moments and milestones in life alongside supporting mums who are figuring out how to put all the parts of entrepreneurship and business building together. Not only is she a photographer and a podcast host, she also supports other mums and photographers in unity to empower each other, break mindset barriers and build the successful lives they envision for themselves and their families. She loves to help share advice and encouragement to those who come into her world to help build that solidarity with like-minded women striving to fill their potential and create thriving businesses with a balanced approach to motherhood. Victoria, welcome to the podcast.
Wow, I sound really good.
You are good. What's it like having it? Because you've been doing this for all of your guests. You did such a wonderful introduction to me that nearly made me cry. How does it feel to hear it back yourself?
It's really nice, isn't it? I mean, when you wake up in the morning, you forget all of the things you've achieved thus far in life, and you're just filled with what you've got to do that day, especially as a mum and a business owner. And it's nice to kind of have it reflected back on you every now and again. And I love it. I just think to start a podcast episode, a podcast interview that way is so nice because you just give your interviewee a little boost and a reminder of all the things they've achieved, all the things they want to achieve. I just think it's a really brilliant way to set the tone. And I'm so grateful. It's lovely. Thank you.
I can't wait to dig in because it's such this beautiful blend of the work that you do in capturing those beautiful moments, the perhaps more, not staged necessarily, but the very organic in the moment joy and wonderfulness of family and life, alongside, as we've kind of touched on before, this messy middle of building a business and being a parent and being a mum and supporting a family. And do you find that your work as a photographer kind of feeds into that passion that you have to help other mums from what you've seen other families experience? Or is it more just this organic evolution of your work as you shifted into parenthood?
Both, I think. Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? I think my photography career has kind of followed my life. So in my 20s, I began as a wedding photographer and all my friends were sort of starting to pair up and get hitched. So it kind of made sense. And so my clients were me, except I wasn't doing that, but they were my contemporaries and that all kind of fit. And then becoming a mum, that all changes because instead you want to prioritize your family time. I didn't want to be off shooting weddings at the weekend and miss time with my girls. And it's a very, very intense job. Being a wedding photographer, I've spoken about it a lot. It's like going into battle, going into a wedding. It's serious. It's a really hard day. And there's so much pressure. You can't redo that. You've got to get it right on the day. And I think I'd been doing it for 11 years and I was just ready for a change. I'd lost a bit of creativity, I think, in that. I felt like I was a bit on autopilot. So when I emerged from my double maternity and the pandemic and kind of came back out into the light, and I thought, right, what am I going to do? Part of me thought I might jack it in and just do something different. But I think photography's always been my kind of buddy. Whatever else has been going on in life, it's been there. And I've loved it, and sometimes I've hated it. And then I've loved it again, but it's always been a constant part of me and my self-expression and my creativity. So I decided I would relaunch it, but I would focus on families, motherhood, and I took it as an opportunity to just go all in on film because I just love that. And I think for family photography, capturing these memories and building an archive of heirloom prints and photographs for parents and then for their children, and these are going to go down to grandchildren and great grandchildren. This is telling their story. I think film is just beautiful, and I love the process of shooting it. And so I thought, right, this is it. I'm going to make the business that I want, because I think for a long time, and it ties in with everything, isn't it? In your 20s and 30s, you're trying to find your way, and you've got this thing about fitting in, and what does the client want? And of course that's important, but you also have to enjoy what you do. And there is an element of education involved in shooting film, why that might be better or more interesting or something different. But I love it. And so I now get to, whenever I go out on a shoot for a family or for a mum to be or for a baby or whatever, I'm loving the process. I'm totally invested. I feel really creative. And I just think that's a really beautiful way to capture a memory on really grainy cinematic film. It's just got something different about it. And in this digital age, everyone's got a digital camera in their pocket. We're all shooting on phones. This is something different. And the whole way it kind of weaves into like my podcast and all the other stuff, it's been really organic, and I'm still figuring it out. I don't really know necessarily how they all fit together, but it's all about being interested in motherhood, wanting to kind of share that story of what motherhood is like today in its reality. And I've always been really ambitious. I come from an entrepreneurial family, and my business has had to really evolve since starting a family. And I've noticed that there are a lot of women who are choosing entrepreneurship just to have the flexibility and freedom that they want to be there for their kids and be the mum that they always envisaged they would be. So they're going into that, sometimes feeling really unsupported, feeling really alone, not quite knowing what to do. Perhaps they've come out of a really kind of institutionalized career in teaching or in a corporate role, and they're suddenly thrown out into the world. They throw themselves, they choose it, they put themselves out into the world and like, right, okay, I'm going to bet on myself, and I'm going to follow this passion, or I'm going to learn about this, and I'm going to make a business, and I'm going to be able to do pick up and drop off. And then they're kind of like, because it's scary. It's scary if you haven't always done that. And if you don't have anyone in your family or in your immediate community that can show you how, sometimes it's hard to know where to turn, and it can be terrifying, and you can feel really alone, especially if you go through a kind of freelancing route. It can be difficult to find your way. And I think there's so much rhetoric online about, 10K months and, mums just kind of working 2 hours a week and turning over 100,000 a month in, with minimal effort. It's just, that's kind of unhelpful, I think. I love it for the people that have managed to do it, but I wanted to tell a different story. And I think it kind of ties into the photography. My photography is very kind of, it's kind of, this is a bit of a random analogy, but a shoot will start off quite polished and traditional, and I'll nail some really beautiful, like fine art portraits of this family that kind of are echoed through the generations. Everyone's standing together. It's a bit looser and it's a bit more connected, but it's not stuffy, but it's curated. And then as a shoot goes on, it all kind of unravels. And at the end, I am showing the messy middle, the chaos, the kids jumping on their parents and tickles and cuddles and laughing and blur in the photos. And I think those two aspects of our lives can sit together. Everyone likes to put their makeup on and dress up and go for a really nice meal or go for a night out. And everyone also likes to sit on the sofa, get a Domino's takeaway, and just veg out in their PJs. Like, we're allowed to have these two things coexist, and there's space for both. And I think that's the only real kind of tie-in that I can relate the photography process to the podcast. But I love them both, so we'll just see where it goes. That was a long answer.
No, but it's beautiful. And there's just so much. The thing that I really hear and that really comes out is that sense of depth. It's not just a photo, it's a story. And it's interesting that you chose to move solely into film, almost like you have replaced the pressure of a wedding with film. Because as you shoot film, you can't see necessarily what you're taking photos of. Is there an edge that you have, that you almost need that edge of risk in your work that keeps you creatively stimulated?
I definitely find shooting film leans into I don't know, it prompts more creativity in me, and there's a bit of mystery about it that I like. I think it's more about the romance of it. I think I'm quite romantic, so I really like this idea of the reveal, you know, that I do my best. I've got 15 years experience as a photographer. I know how to make a portrait. I know how to take, you know, I can take a good picture, but you're never quite sure. And it is a bit risky, I suppose. You know, there's all sorts of things that could go wrong with the film. Film's very delicate. It needs to have very specific and environmental circumstances for it to thrive, but you take care of it, you look after it, you nurture it, you expose it correctly, you send it off. And when it comes back, it's a surprise. And there's a delayed gratification factor there, which I think again ties in with business. You invest in something, you put the effort in, and you're not going to see the real results straight away. I think there's a lot of immediate gratification, but it's short-lived these days. So, you take a picture, you do it with your kids, they take a picture of you, they can I see? They look and it's done. There's no romance in that for me. And then all these pictures just live on a cloud. We've got thousands and thousands of photos just clogging up all these servers that live somewhere else on the other side of the world. It's kind of bonkers. You're not enjoying those pictures every day. I'm really into print and albums and heirlooms and artwork and putting it on the wall, and the impact of that on the family's connectedness as well. If you've got a really beautiful picture that you've got on your wall and you see it every day, and when your kids are driving you absolutely mad, and you're ready to throw them at the wall, you can just look at that picture, take a deep breath and be like, it's okay. It's okay, because it's a reminder of what you've built, and why you're doing all this stuff. And, it gives you that resilience. And the kids love it because it makes them feel that they belong. This is their family. And, little kids that just, even now, I've got the same pictures up that I've had on the wall for like 2 years in our hall, and the kids still point themselves out, which is really nice. But they don't get tired of it, and it is storytelling, and I think it's important. And I think I often wonder, what if the cloud collapsed, or what if someone switched it off? What would we have, to remember the lives that we're living day to day? And so there's a tangible element to it as well, the feel of a really beautiful piece of paper with a photograph that means something to you on it, and you can pass it around, everyone looks at it. Maybe I am too much of a romantic, but I think in this digital age, it's a nice antidote to that kind of, it's pixels versus grain. And like links versus legacies. I just really like it. I think there's a place for it in 2025, I think.
I 100% agree. And I was literally thinking this the other week, I've got like 15,000 pictures on my phone and videos and all sorts of things, and because I've got a massive storage on it, and I was like, what if this gets nicked? I don't actually know how much of that I've backed up, and they're mainly now of my daughter, and they're mainly of these moments in time. But literally the juxtaposition of growing up in a house where we had photo albums and photos on the walls, and like you say, I will still look at, there's a particular photo that I have, or my parents have at home, of my mum on a bike and me as a baby in the seat by the park. And it's just one of these most gloriously captured moments on film that's been blown up, that just all of those pieces of the puzzle have fitted in that moment in time, just to capture it in a way that nothing else could have captured it. There is just something so human about that timing, about the kind of the click. And I think, like you say, about this delayed versus instant gratification in this world that we live in now, where it's like, if we don't get the result yesterday, we're frustrated, which feeds into all this other stress, and this kind of concept of actually it being a part of our well-being to have patience and to look forward to something and to not get something straight away. How have you found that shift with that juggle of this wild nuance of patience with children and navigating the pivots with business?
Motherhood is humbling in so many ways, but patience is a skill that I think you have to develop quite quickly. I suspect you might be the same. I'm quite a fast-paced character, and I like everything done yesterday. And it's that little thing, isn't it, of when you're walking somewhere and you just need to get to the place, and you're holding your child's hand and they just stop and pick up a stone, And in your mind, you're like, put the stone down. We need to go. And sometimes I get it right and sometimes I get it wrong. And I'm not even sure, sometimes you can't stop. But just taking a deep breath and thinking about this from their point of view, they just really want to look at the stone and they want to show you the stone, and they're looking for a moment of connection. And if you just tell them to sod off and come on, put the stone down and go, you're missing it. And they don't have that moment of connection with you. And I think that's been a really big learning curve for me, massive, because it's not in my nature to slow down. And it's probably really, really good for me. I probably needed it. And I still, struggle sometimes. But yeah, I think kids are amazing. They can teach us so much. And the fact that, you remember back, you used to be like that. When you were a kid, you weren't rushing about, darting, trying to do 1,000 things in 10 minutes. You would just sit and play and look at a stone. And that's fine. That's good. Just natural curiosity and just not having that rush. And I'm kind of mindful that I don't want them to feel that energy from me, that we're always rushing, because I don't think that'll do them any good. But that's been hard. But I think, again, shooting film, doing that now, when I go on a shoot, it's not a frantic wedding where I'm like, digitally firing off, 1,000, 1,500 shots in one day, and then having to come back and work my way through those. This is like a mindful experience. Every shot cost me like £3. So as well, yes. That helps. That helps. But it makes you slow down and you're like, right, I'm not going to just press the shutter. I'm going to wait for that exact moment when it's right and I feel like everything's fallen into place. And that has been really good as well. So I think, I'm subconsciously, all the things that are happening at the moment are seemingly in an effort to calm me down.
That's so interesting, because actually, even as you say that, there's such quality. Like, it's amazing how many parallels we can draw here between film and kind of everything else. But the quality of not just flippantly pressing the finger because we can, but this sense of it needs to be worth something. And these moments with our children are worth something. And oh my God, I can hard relate. Like, I think it's taken me 3 years to get to that point of surrender, to be like, oh, actually, it's okay. I can have these different paces of what I want, but ultimately my frustration is very much self-driven by the wanting to do more, or the kind of, I'm in that element of, I'm annoyed because actually in my head you're blocking me, but you're not blocking me. It's just that self-imposed thing in relation to everything else in the world. And that ability to get out a camera and take a photo in the moment. And this background chatter of, well, what's content for social media and actually
a whole other thing.
Yeah, right. Because that, for me, like, I found that stripped away so much of those present moments with my daughter. Do you find now with your relationship with social media, building a podcast out, this balance with your photography work, what's your perception at the minute of the impact on social media in all of this?
Ugh.
$1 million pound.
Again,
$1 million pound,
really,
£1 million question.
It really is. I think I've got serious beef with Instagram, because it lives in my head too much, and I'm fighting with it a little bit. But it's hard. I think it's a necessary evil. I'd like to say I really enjoy it. What I do enjoy is when I get social on it. I really enjoy, I comment a lot more than I used to. I used to lurk and like, and now I'm like trying to comment. And I think if you can get into the habit of actually starting conversations with humans, that's great. That makes it all just feel a lot more, I don't know, it's rewarding. You're building friendships with people that you haven't met, maybe you'll never meet, but you're connecting. And I think that is, I guess, what it's for. But I think there's such a big temptation. I think most people lurk and occasionally like. I know people lurk and like on what I do. And oh yeah, I know about that because I saw it, and they saw that you didn't like it or make it known that, and it's frustrating. But yeah, I don't know. I went through a phase of posting every day for my photography business when I reignited it for 14 months, I think. And a lot of it was drivel because I just had this discipline. And again, it was self-imposed. Why do we do it to ourselves? It was self-imposed discipline. I have to do it every day. And I was like, I'll just do it for this time and I'll see. And obviously by the end of it, I'll, have 1 million followers and I'll be really rich and successful. And that didn't happen at all. I think in all that time, I grew like 60 followers. It was absolutely diabolical.
Oh God, that's so destroying.
It's so destroying, yeah. But I think I meandered around quite a lot of different sort of content. I think that's why. And I was trying to cut it. I don't know, it is a creative outlet at the same time. So I'm not hard on myself about it. I think it's kind of hilarious. And again, what you were saying about, your daughter's 3 and you just feel like you're coming out of this kind of panicked state. And I feel the same. So my daughter's about to be 3 and my eldest is 4.5-ish. So I think there's something about those early years where you are just flooded with cortisol and you kind of have to give yourself a break. And there's massive identity shift. Who am I? What am I? Where am I? You can't be the same version of yourself that you were before. And so you have to find this new version, but which bits do you take from the pre-mother version? Which bits can you take? Which bits do you have to leave behind? And which new bits are going to come in? And how does it all fit together? And it's a massive challenge, just figuring out the identity part, especially if you are ambitious and you don't feel able. And I always envied the mothers who did feel able to just sink into it and just savor the moment. They have such wisdom. And I wasn't like that at all. I was like fighting it with every fiber of my being. Like my brain was buzzing with activity. And I wanted to know what was next for me. And I was looking after my children perfectly well and they're very happy. But I wasn't really happy to just sink into the moment. And I might regret that later in life. But I think as well, I give myself grace that just was inevitable for me because of the sort of person that I am. I had to and it kind of, it landed in the middle of like a natural career break shift anyway. And so it all just kind of, and we built this house at the same time during the pandemic. There was a lot going on and it just felt like a very big chapter divide and I wanted to know what's next. And I drove myself crazy trying to figure it out and posted relentlessly on Instagram about all sorts of nonsense. And I feel like, again, I'm just coming out of it and things feel like a little more settled. But some of that is just having a little more headspace when your baby is slightly less desperately dependent on you. I think that's kind of the organic way of things. It is massively overwhelming to have little people, as you know.
It's so overwhelming. And I think even just the brain capacity thing for me, honestly, it was like one of the biggest shockers, I think. And like the pace change. And it was almost like, actually, I don't know about you, but I found the first kind of 6 to 12 months, well, the first 6 months of my daughter's life, because they don't really move. And I was kind of doing a lot of online work anyway. It was kind of like, oh, nothing much had changed. And then she started moving and I had kind of curveball knee surgery and wanted to, similar to you really, like also wanted to pivot. But you end up kind of, it's not even like you're bringing up one business or one thing. It's like you are growing 50 different things because you've suddenly also got to navigate all these extra logistics or timekeeping or, oh God, actually, I can't just leave the child alone. Like all these things that we know, but the practicality of it and the time and the thought and the energy that goes into that. And I think this is where, exactly as you were saying about the whole online world with the success metrics and what we see, and even though logically we know it's not about that, it becomes about that without realizing it because of how our body is unconsciously even responding in those moments. And I've definitely fallen into that trap. You can always tell when I'm stressed because my Instagram use is prolific. I'm like, but you have to kind of like catch. I think I've got into this rhythm now of being like, I have to also be self-accountable. It's like the self-accountability is even more important. And in a way, it has definitely taught me about focus or what's important versus actually maybe that's not so important. And actually maybe my career is even more important than before a child because it has to fulfill me, because my time needs to feel good. Otherwise, I don't feel like I've got my teeth stuck into something enough. And I can't really describe that hunger or that need for something in reciprocity. Do you have that? Do you think that's like is that the entrepreneurial spirit, which is just a part of our character? Or do you think that's learned through the kind of navigation of life and experience up to this point?
I mean, that's a big nature nurture question, isn't it? I definitely have it. It is a hunger. And it's so interesting because my dad is the entrepreneur in our family, and we grew up, he was always self-employed. So he was a builder at first, and then he went on to do a few other things, but always self-employed. And so that was the environment we grew up in. There were a lot of working hours, but they fitted around the things that we wanted to do. And my mum was the homemaker, and she was the nurturer, and she took excellent care of us. And we were so lucky to have her just always present, always there. And I am an unfortunate mix of them. So, and also it's been so interesting because I see my father and all the things that he's achieved, and I love him to death. I'm such a daddy's girl. I love my mum too, of course I do, but like I've always been a daddy's girl since I was a baby. And there's also an element I want to make him proud, but I definitely just have that from him, and it could be from watching him, it could be from all our conversations that we've had, or it could be that he's just passed that on to me and it is nature. But becoming a mother has made me look at things in such an interesting way, and my mum has found it so satisfying because my dad's been able to do all the things that he's done because my mum has been at home looking after us, and he has had the freedom of going out to work and coming home and having his dinner on the table, his clothes are washed, the house is in relatively good order, and the children are taken care of. And that was their setup, and it worked beautifully for them. But then I come and have children, and I don't have that person who's got the dinner on the table for me at 5 o'clock. I don't have someone else doing the washing. Like my partner, I mean, I'm going to be kind. He is good now, but he had his own struggles with becoming a dad, and our relationship was very young when we had 2 children and built a house in a pandemic. Like there were a lot of stresses and a lot of financial pressure, and he had his own kind of journey to go on into fatherhood, which is complex, and it's a different podcast episode. But I didn't have that support that naturally used to come with those gender roles, because I wanted to go out and do the things that I'd always done and build the business, but I also had a lot of responsibility for these babies. And my dad, I think for the first time, saw that and saw exactly what's involved, because he wasn't in the house every day in the day when my mum was looking after us when we were very little. And he always appreciated her hugely, but I don't think he ever really he wasn't witnessing how hard it is. And so then to sort of see me, and for me to kind of recognize that I'm sort of struggling for this identity and I'm ambitious and I want to do stuff. It's not ambitious like, you know, it's about having impact and feeling a sense of purpose and making a difference in the world, isn't it? And knowing that you are fulfilling your potential. And I wanted all of those things, but I was really struggling to find what the next step might be. And I also had to get the washing on, and I also had to change the nappy. And I'm also carrying around in my head, you know, who ate what when, and when was the last time she had sweet potato, and should I try a scrambled egg today? And like, that's a lot to carry in your head as well. And I think there must be, as part of why I wanted to start the podcast, is just curiosity, and for my own solidarity. You know, some women choose entrepreneurship because they want the flexibility specifically, and they haven't necessarily felt that urge to do something for themselves. It's just that's going to work for them in their season of life, and they can figure out a way to do it. But there are a lot of women who have that hunger that you talk about, and it has to look a little bit different when you become a mum. So what does it look like? You know, and it's all those questions around how do you balance nurturing with this striving, because it's hard. It's really hard. But I'm really early on in the podcast, there are amazing women really putting themselves out of their comfort zone to try and achieve it in whatever way that looks and fits them best. And I just love hearing their stories, and it's a bit of solidarity for me, But I feel it's so connecting, like speaking to you, and you are talking about how you have this in you and I have it in me. And coming back to your point, I don't know how to define it. I don't know whether it's nature or nurture, but I know that it's there. And I don't just want to call it entrepreneurship or the entrepreneurial spirit. It's definitely spirited, but it's just a longing to create, I think. It's building something from nothing, whatever that might be, just to, get all this energy out of you and put it to some good use. It can be a lot simpler. That all these labels, mumpreneur, entrepreneur, they're loaded because society is so complex, and some people like them and some people hate them. And, we have to have words for things. And I'm generally neutral about most words, but it is, I think, just creating something, putting the energy somewhere that feels good to you.
I hard relate to that. And I think this concept of energy, which is so... It's so hard to put into words because it is such a physical expenditure, like you say. It's kind of like, I'm not really sure what it is, but it's just a feeling and it's a drive and that striving. And I think I'm exactly the same as you in this real complexity of the push and the drive and the almost needing it for well-being, alongside the deep love and the deep nurturing and the wanting to be there and the wanting to be present and being able to kind of breathe into that. And perhaps it's a lifelong practice. I'm sure, there is no perfect answer, is there? It's kind of like the catching of the moments of, I'm doing that thing again, where I'm thinking about work and, the TV's on and my daughter's just said something. I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know what's going on right now. And like just constantly having to bring ourselves back. And there's something that's so beautiful, about filming all of that and the old fashionedness almost of it and the simplicity of life before all this amazing stuff that we have with technology and this ability to connect on social media. Because like you say, I think that intention behind it really helps. I know that last year, or in the first kind of 2 or 3 years of Sienna's life, like I would find myself using it thinking I was connecting, or there was an element of performance to it, because I love that's a natural expenditure of that energy too. There is a creation in that. But perhaps there were other things that I also had to work through truly to be seen or to connect. And I just wonder for you, are there moments where you find that it shifts into a sense of performance and you bring yourself back? Or is it that you're literally like, it's just figuring it out as you go and you don't even, it's so part of that building phase of building the podcast and the photography that it's still very much in that organic, like, I'm not even really sure. I'm going to show up every day and look to do, see what comes up.
I think I'm still in the very depths of chaos with it. I haven't figured it out at all. In terms of marketing, both the podcast and the photography, and in terms of showing up, I haven't figured it out at all. And I've been at it for ages. But I feel determined to. And yes, and I think it's hard, that word authentic. I just think, and as a photographer, I see it in images that I take. So there's a self-consciousness that you can hold in your body that presents in an image that makes it awkward. And I think you're shooting a reel to market your business and it can look awkward as hell. I've posted thousands of them. And people can't connect with it because it's cringy, just makes you feel a bit, and you love that person, but you're like, ooh, just something about the way they're talking just looks, and it, as you're doing it, you are performing. And actually, our generation, we've been more kind of taught to perform. It's all very well if you're 18 and you've come into this social media world and it's all afresh to you and you can just go in and be yourself. I think actually we have to do quite a lot of unpicking to just be ourselves because of the fitting into boxes and because of the putting your best foot forward and because of just expectations that were kind of placed on us at quite a young age, specifically, I suppose, as women. You know, we were brought up in an age where the BBC still had the Queen's English, you know. You know, and everyone said that and Apple. You know, when I was watching TV in the 80s, you know, all the news presenters spoke like that. And that was kind of, you know, you do present. You don't just go on and there were no dialects, there was no, and all of this subliminally is playing in that there is a way to do things, and it's, you do it properly, and I don't know, and it is hard to unpick that, but I think it's empowering, and I think it's liberating to unpick it and to just learn to be yourself. And I think actually the podcast, social media is way easier for me as well, because I think there's something about marketing your own service. It's fucking awful. It's so awful. Oh God, it's so personal. You feel so vulnerable. If people say they don't like it, it's just like you're wounded deeply, because you're really, you believe in something, you believe you can add value, but it's coming from you. And there's something really, really hard about that. And that's why, even marketing agencies might not necessarily do their own marketing. It's the same for companies. It's hard to sell yourself. It really is. And I feel like with the podcast, I'm not selling myself. I'm selling the mission of connecting mums who are trying to juggle play dates and pitches. So that's a lot easier. And I actually found this when I was marketing the charity that I used to run with my dad. That was easy as well. I could market that. I could talk about it for days and days and days, and I absolutely loved it. And it wasn't personal, because you're doing it on behalf of a cause, or you're doing it on behalf of other people who don't have a voice. So you feel far more confident to do that. And I think if anyone is trying to promote their own service and you're nailing it, then brilliant. But if you're not nailing it and you feel stuck, or you feel like you're drowning in it and you don't know what to do, that's natural. It's really, really hard. But I'm going to keep going because I'm a glutton for punishment. But do you find that? Like, it is hard, right? Just when it's your own baby, your business, your service, it's hard.
It's really funny, because I was literally saying to someone the other day, like, I am an excellent salesperson. I've worked for companies before. I was always, when I used to do promo work, I was always like top of the, back in the day, like top of the picking or whatever. And I actually made a conscious choice at the start of this year. I knew that unless I faced my own blocks around selling and marketing myself, I was never actually going to be able to sustain my self-employed living. And it was so interesting to me, because before I had my daughter, I'd been self-employed for over a decade alongside other work, but I'd never had a problem getting work. And I think part of it is the time as well. Like, I got so worried about not being available for what I was selling. So with people that I work with, it's always like, well, what are you worried about when people buy from you? And sometimes it is this sense of, it's very hard to differentiate, especially on social media, what the lines are between our personal lives and our professional lives, and the idea of selling something. And I think I've consciously been doing work to almost separate myself from the identity of what I'm selling with my coaching or with Club Thrive, to be able to, exactly as you say, be able to sell it. Otherwise, it was getting to a point where I was like, this is getting into territory now where I actually can't afford to just keep doing it as I'm doing it. Because there's kind of these vanity metrics that feel good, like, oh, people are liking or people are commenting, but no one's buying anything. So I'm obviously not selling, and I've got other things here that I need to sort out. And part of it is my own complete and utter brand and personal identity confusion, let's be honest. Like, so much of it has just been the mess that I feel like didn't expect, that just I think just happens in parenthood, that you just don't expect. I mean, it was all good before I became a parent. And it's not a bad thing. It's just the thing of the transition into this next life chapter.
It's almost inevitable, but it's a shock because no one really talks about it.
No one talks about it. Yeah.
This is the thing about the podcast as well, and about all your conversations, on motherhood. I don't know if a mum-to-be would really listen to it, because you just think you're going to figure it out. Like,
I didn't. When people would say to me, time changes, I'd be like, who do they think they are? Like, I've worked late at night, I've got up at the weekends, like, I'm fine with not having sleep. And it wasn't about the lack of sleep, it was about the lack of time. And I think people are scared, to be honest. Like, you don't want to ruin someone's perception of pregnancy or birth or having a child. You want people to organically explore that themselves. But also, I think it's very hard to communicate because it's so personal and it's so, it can get dark quite quickly. And like you say, the repercussions for the relationships and for the home life. And exactly the same here with this navigation of self-employed parenting and time and money. Like at the end of the day, I was saying to my partner the other day, like it's literally been, this year has been about how to leverage time to make money in a way that also fulfills me, because I don't want to just be cranking after 10k months if I'm feeling like I'm having to fill it's not even about, like, I know we can make 10k a month without having to fill our calendars, like all this social media language that comes in, it's like, doing more for less. But it's like, actually, I don't want to have to be on a Zoom call or really pushing sales online, because I also want to be there for my daughter. And I think this is that richness that we have in self-employment, or just figuring, someone, if you're listening and you're figuring out whether to go self-employed or not, it's actually like what fulfills you as a person in this chapter now. And I think it's like that preconceived idea of what I thought parenthood was going to be like. I'd worked with kids for 20 years. I was like, I'm going to be fine as a parent. There's no problem being a parent. And then you've got this child that's like, nah! And you're like, oh my God, I'm under the thumb. There is so much to navigate. But I do think, like you say, it's a real invitation to hone those selling skills, to be curious about, that's interesting. I'm finding it easier to sell this idea and this concept than myself. So what things am I worried about in myself of being seen in a certain way, or of selling myself? And I think this is where these conversations are just so refreshing, where we can be so incredibly honest, to be like, it's really messy, it's really hard, I've burnt out for the 4th time, it's not working, whatever it is, without shame. But also recognizing where we create a lot of that, and society doesn't help. But how can we honestly try and, the whole point of this podcast is trying to figure out how we can thrive on our terms and have all the things that we want. And maybe there are compromises. And do you think, are there things that you've had to compromise that you've been like, so, like, I'm closing my eyes, squinting, just even thinking about, like, you've been so reluctant to let go of, in order to create this life where you are able to be present at home and doing work that you enjoy?
Do you know what? I compromise sleep all the time. But do you know what's interesting? I'm not reluctant. And I know the health risks of my current lifestyle in the long term. Like, I went through that whole phase for years, listening to Rangan Chatterjee interview Matthew Walker, all about the importance of sleep. And I know everything. I know that it's bad, but I compromise it willingly because I just can't help myself. And I think, I think it's about giving yourself grace. Like, the thing is, you will spend your time how you want to. I want to be there for my children, and I am always. Like, we're lucky we have grandparents, so they've had a day each every week. The kids have been in nursery 2 days a week. My eldest is about to start school, and I've had them every Friday. I mean, I had them both for a full year at the start, and I've had them every Friday as our day, and that is for us. And I'm there every pick up and drop off and dinner and weekends, and I'm always there for them. And I want to do that. I also want to work. And I think that has taken quite a long time to kind of recognize I want to work. I want to work more than I want to watch TV, which is massively disheartening for my partner, because his favorite thing in the world is TV. And then the relationship comes into it. But he needs that decompression. I just want to go back to work. I might be addicted to work. And I don't think it's long term, but I think it's for now, as I'm trying to figure out these next steps. Because I think once you kind of gain some traction, things can calm down. But I think there's a kind of chaos that, again, is synchronized with those early years of motherhood, where you are trying to redefine your identity. And that chaos, you have to navigate that your own way. And you have to allow yourself to. And if my reaction to it is to work, because I think of work as play. Mm-hmm. I think I always kind of have. I think of it as a kind of a creative outlet. I find it actually more relaxing than raising my children. So I have to do it at the end of the day.
Can relate.
Yeah. Bit of decompression. And it does feel like a bit of something for me. And at the moment, that is just what I'm prioritizing. I obviously really care about it because I'm doing it. And I'm doing it over sleep, and I'm doing it over, I sacrifice, I don't know what I sacrifice, because I'm really good with my friends. I always make time for them. I love them. I think, to be honest, and he'll love this, the biggest sacrifice that I'm making, and again, it hasn't been very reluctantly, which is awful to say, but is time with Chris. And he's been impatient with that. He's currently very patient with that, because I think we've gone through a long struggle where we've tried to navigate that amongst lots of other things and all the stresses that come, all the stresses that a baby brings to a relationship. That's been a lot. But at the moment, he's amazing, and he totally is patient with me. He appreciates that it's just this thing that I've got to get out of my system. I need to figure out where I'm going. And so he's brilliant, but that's probably been the biggest sacrifice. And yeah, it's complex. And yeah, I don't know. I can't think of anything else.
I think there was a lot to be said for that, though, and like thanks
It's awful.
for sharing. No, but
I feel really bad about it, just saying out loud. But
I think it's the acknowledgement of we can't do it all, and something does almost have to be. It's not like a sacrificial lamb, but something almost has to be. That something does have to give, and like we've had completely the same conversations, where hard conversations, and I think that decision to kind of do what you can to make it work, and to face up to what isn't working, and to kind of do the best thing to try and get some form of equilibrium back to keep the mood forward moving, especially when you're both juggling so much stuff. And like I've definitely, like, I question it all the time, like, am I addicted to work? Probably. I get a sense of peace when I open my laptop. It's a decompression time for me, just looking at a screen. That whole, what's it called, time revenge something or other, like the doom scrolling that we do an hour before we go to bed. Like there was a whole thing about, it was like a trending thing last year where I found myself 10 o'clock, probably should go to bed now, an hour on Instagram, just like kind of following people, that it wasn't just scrolling reels, it was intentional. There was kind of an intent behind it, but it was absolutely, I want my hour of peace. And I think work absolutely can give that. Like sometimes I find myself just being like, I'm just gonna clean because it's peace, and this kind of divide of actually maybe that's fine. Like there's so much storytelling and narrative that goes around these activities that we have that's good or bad, but we don't see dads getting the same thing of the work addiction thing, or obviously we don't want to compromise health to the point of it being very negative. But I was asking I saw a high performance coach, a male high performance coach, posting about something online with his business the other day, and I posted on his thing. I was like, can I just ask, like, your partner in all of this, because he was saying, he's built this life around also being there for the kids. And I was like, just as a matter of interest, what is actually the divide between the time that you give to the children and the time that your partner gives, your wife? And he was like, well, it's probably 70-30. He was very honest, like, to his credit. And I was like, yeah, we cannot build these things without, to the level that we're probably capable of building them to, without so much of that equity in like, even you can't give someone else your brain capacity, but even in that, like the unspoken stuff that is being thought about, and the energy drain, and how much actually I think I need work, and I want work like you to regulate, to create, to stay alive mentally.
No, completely. And it comes back to what I was saying about my dad. He wouldn't have been able to do all of those things had he had responsibility for that mental load and the physical load of raising us when we were very small. It's reality. It's absolutely reality. And I think it's about, for the partner, I mean, we just have to be honest, like the overwhelm physically and emotionally for a new mum is enormous. There is an overwhelm for a new dad. And we've had that. Chris has had his own, I'm going to say, his own journey that he's had to go on to kind of just reacclimatize. And it's massive, and it's a huge amount of responsibility for dad as well. But it's massive for mum. And I think it's about, and this is where we've got to, and he's been so brilliant of late. He's like, right, well, this is you. In a way that he wasn't before. We were at odds before, and we were both grappling with this new version of life without a really solid foundation of couplehood before children. I think that's a big element. And he wanted me to relax the way that he relaxes. And he's like, well, if you're stressed, just sit down. And I'm like, no, I'm stressed. I need to go and get on the laptop or I need to clean this thing because I just want to feel like I'm ahead. I get really stressed out by, big to-do lists. And as a mum, your to-do list is like never ending anyway. And I just want to knock some things off. And that calms me because if I feel overwhelmed, a lot of that is just heightened by the fact that I've got 1,000 things that I need to do in the next however long. And I think he's had to just recognize that it's okay that we're different. And my rest isn't going to look the same as his. So our flopping on the sofa isn't restful for me, but it is enjoyable for me. It still counts. It's still a good thing, but it's not how I would choose to rest. And so we've kind of worked out between us now. And I'm so grateful that we've both been able to get to this point because I think it's hard, really, really hard because you've got all these stress responses at play. And in a relationship where you're looking after a new human, you're both in distress. You just are. You're both grappling. You're trying to figure it out. It's all new. You didn't come with an instruction manual. You don't know what to do next. Who's going to do this feed? Who's going to do? And it's so much. And you really get to know each other in a way that perhaps you hadn't before because you just haven't been in distress at the same time with like 2 hours sleep per day. It's just you haven't been in that situation. It's really intense. And yeah, I think it's about, as a mum, thinking about, right, what is stressing me out the most in this moment? Is it this email that I need to send? Or is it that the pile of washing's hitting the ceiling? Or is it that, whatever it might be, I don't know, that you need to sit on the sofa and watch TV? Is it that you need to be by yourself and actually just checking in and being like, what do I need? Because I think we can lose sight of it so easily. And we're just like, no, it's fine. I'm fine. You do this. I'll do that, whatever you want. You just keep going and going and going. And actually, what do you need? And that's something I've really had to kind of learn to do. And I'm still learning because, you have to kind of figure out how to be in tune with yourself. Because if you're functioning properly and you're happy, then everything else in the family generally will go better, I find. Whereas if you're drowning, then the mood is dire.
You've summed that up just so perfectly. That's exactly it. It's beyond dire, isn't it? It actually is unhappy. And I think this is the absolute navigation that we've had to have as well, is this kind of real sense of it's such a change. Like becoming a parent is such a change. And I think even, there was a time when I was like, gosh, do I, from focusing on working with women and mums, do I also now work with dads? Because I'm so, the impact on a family, for example, for everyone who's struggling, it's massive. And this idea of allyship and actually, how women leave the workforce because of this complete, whether it's gender inequality, it doesn't actually even really matter. It's just more the role that we have in society and life, with the economy, with everything, that feeds into this bigger cycle of a much bigger challenge of well-being, but well-being not being flouncy, but being actually a very gritty thing that requires an adjustment of priorities and value of ourselves to keep
it requires
ourselves
work.
At the top. Yeah, it does.
I think I have to work to look after myself. Yeah, really. And a lot of people I know might find that quite alien. And this is another thing between my partner and I. He's very good at self-care. He just always has been. He's intuitive with it. He's in touch with himself. If he feels tired, he'll go for a nap. And this is why parenthood did not sit well, because I'm like, you can't go for a nap right now. That's not convenient. But, he knows how to listen to his body. And I've just thoroughly detached from mine sometimes. I have to really work hard to sit with myself and think, okay, what do I need physically? And your body knows. I just did an interview with a somatic healing coach, and she was telling me off a bit afterwards, are you looking after yourself? Are you sleeping? And I'm just like, no. But I know that I have faith I will. Like, this is a season, and I'm just allowing myself to have it because I obviously want it. And I'm not going to fight with myself. If it's how I'm choosing to spend my time, and as well, it's part of believing that what you're doing matters. I think with the podcast, especially, it's a brand new thing for me. But the conversations are so deep and meaningful. It sounds cliche, doesn't it? But the long form aspect, the connection, I love it. I just think it's giving women a platform. And I'm not interviewing women who have made it. I'm interviewing women who are trying. And I love that. I would, if I was to interview a woman who'd made it, I'd want to talk to her about when she was trying. and when it all felt really hard. And I know that, you know, every stage has its challenges, but I just want it to be really relatable. And it's amazing, even in these early days, and you must find this all the time with Club Thrive, that you're just able to connect people. You know, like you just think, right, I'm talking to this person. Do you know who you should definitely speak to is this woman over here, because she's doing this amazing thing. And I love that. I think it's brilliant. It's community.
I love that too. And I think this level of actually, you know, we've kind of been brought up over the last decade or two on social media with bigger being best. And actually, there's such a beauty in this depth. And maybe it's not for everyone, but I think for some of us that really value that sense of connection, and it's not about competition, it is about collaboration. And of course, there's an edge of like, well, I also want to succeed and all these kind of things. But when it's done in that sense of collaboration, trusting that people will work with who they're meant to work with, and this sense of, oh, I know who's actually going to be better for you than me. Like, I will always be that person to do that, because it suits everyone, and everyone benefits from it. And then there is this sense of community, which I do think has been ironically lost with how things have shifted online, which, you know, there are so many benefits to this world that we live in now. But there is this sense that, you know, unless you have those communities when you have your child, or when you leave a job or whatever, you know, even coming from a work environment into working for yourself can be like shockingly isolating. That's definitely what I was so surprised by, was this sense of isolation in having my daughter, and not realizing how much those connections with other people really mattered. And I think this is why, exactly as you say, these podcasts and these things that we do actually have such an impact, and that energy expenditure that we're so desperate to like get out of us, alongside the control that I think, you know, this kind of slight potential addiction to work is also this sense of control, and being able to I think continue to evolve and expand and not go stale and stagnant. You know, it's a sense of being understood and respected within our own selves. You know, there is well-being in that. And I think, you know, this association that we have with our bodies, especially as women, is incredibly important. And, you know, it is a practice, and we go through phases with it. But there's also something to be said for embracing the chapters of rest. You know, I've embraced 8 months of working, but also taking that time to really recharge. And I think when we trust ourselves enough to know that we won't ever do anything that, well, if we do, we find out and then we learn and we burn, and, you know,
Exactly,
we kind of will evolve anyway with those kind of people, then that's part of the fun.
It's all the journey, isn't it? And yeah, hopefully you catch it before you tip over into something that's serious. And you know, we have a lot of autoimmune conditions in our family, and like weird and wonderful diseases that nobody knows about. And, you know, I've had arthritic knees since I was 8, and it's just all these kind of quirky things. And I'm fully aware of the long-term potential for, you know, high cortisol and not having enough sleep. And I think it's a balance. And I think I'm not going to push it too far. You know, if I have a few nights where I'm up late, I'll have one night where I have, you know, 14 hours sleep or something. And you kind of, you know, it doesn't work that way in an ideal world, but I'm also trying to build something. And so the two have to kind of coexist somehow. And hopefully you just catch yourself before, if it's going to a degree where you're putting your health at risk, you know. So important to be mindful of that. And I don't wear these kind of habits as a badge of honor. I definitely am not in favor of hustle. I'm not in favor of kind of just slogging yourself stupid. But I also don't like this notion that it's easy. I don't think that's helpful either. It's not easy. You have to work at it, and it's not for everybody as well. You know, if you don't want to take your work home with you and be at your laptop of an evening occasionally, then don't become self-employed. And I learned that. I saw that growing up. You know, I have memories of my dad at a typewriter on our dining table.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, literally early 90s, typing away these massive big keys, making all this noise while I was trying to watch Rosie and Jim or whatever it was. But yeah, and I saw favorite, and I saw that, like, that's what and in some ways I was then better prepared, because that's what I've always known. And I do think that arms you a little bit, and you're better informed to make the decision because you know what's involved. But with that comes the freedom to choose, and freedom is so valuable, so valuable. And I feel sad when people tell me that they feel trapped in their job that doesn't fulfill them, and they have these responsibilities, financial responsibilities and mortgages and childcare and all those things, and they don't feel able to take a different path. And I would never lead somebody in a direction they didn't feel comfortable with, but I suspect that part of my, I don't know, I kind of can't help myself. I feel like if there's somebody that's kind of on the edge of thinking like, and it's all about pain points, isn't it? You know, you have to get to a point where your current career really is painful for you, to the extent that actually the unknown that's on the other side of what potentially you could do instead is more attractive. And it's for everyone to decide where that pain point is. Some people might just be like, oh, my job's all right. Some people go into life expecting to hate their job and they just live for the weekends. And if they're comfortable with it, then that's fine too. But I suppose having experienced the freedom that comes from running your own show, and it's stressful, but it is free and you don't have to ask permission for stuff like going on holiday, or, you know, you can decide, and you'll have seasons of working harder and then have seasons of kind of like enjoying the fruits of your labor and taking it easier. And it's all ebbs and flows. And it's, I don't know, like I said, I find it fun. And I just think it's about confidence. If you can give somebody more information about the reality of it, and the good and the bad and the ugly, then they are empowered with that knowledge to make the right decision for them. And particularly for mums who are struggling, you know, childcare sometimes can wipe out a whole mum's salary. And that's awful. It's so soul destroying that you go to work to be away from your children, and then all your salary you give to the people looking after your children. It's maddening. You know, I feel so sorry for people who are in that situation. And there's so much guilt that comes with it that, again, I don't think the dads necessarily feel. You know, I feel huge amount of guilt for saying that, you know, if I'm sacrificing anything, it's probably time, quality time with my partner. We could have more of that. But I don't know if a man necessarily was, you know, working late of an evening, that he would instinctively go to that feeling of guilt. He probably would be more likely, because of the way society has, you know, raised him, to think, well, this is what I do. It's my job. And I'm important. I have to work to put bread on the table. So, you know.
It's so
Whereas
ingrained,
for women,
isn't
it's
it?
guilt. It's guilt. It's guilt. I feel bad everywhere I turn. And that's part of the, you know, the burden that we carry, and we have to kind of unpick for ourselves.
Yeah, it goes back to what you were saying before about choice, isn't it? It's kind of, we can recognise that guilt and then kind of acknowledge that we don't have to feel it, but we feel it because of these things. And like you were saying about the confidence, you know, just, I think this is why these conversations and what you're doing with the podcast is so invaluable, you know, so that someone can know the impact of having a child and running a business. And it's not just sugar coated. Yes, we can romanticize it, and let's do that, because there is incredible beauty in the freedom of time and the freedom of choice and all the things that we can have in running our own businesses. But it doesn't come without the odd day of tears or the wobbles can I do it? And, you know, and I think the more that we kind of embrace the fact that we all experience that at whatever level that we're at, then the more accessible it becomes to other women who, and other individuals, mums who might be considering it as an option, because there is so much fear involved of letting go of the, you know, the structures that we have. So I think it's great that we can talk openly, and I hope if you're listening, you know, if you have questions around this, do come and follow and get involved, because I think the majority of us are actually really approachable and really nice, and would be happy to answer any questions, honestly answer questions, like not just fakely answer questions. Yeah, it's great. Like if you have questions, like come and ask other, you know, mums that work for themselves, just ask those questions so that we can be honest, and then you can make the choice. Like you can actually make a choice rather than it being out of a place of necessity. Or like you say, it always makes me think of that Tony Robbins quote, change happens when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. I mean, you know,
I knew there was someone wiser than me. Yeah.
No, I don't know about that. But it's just this kind of, and it's true, because I've had that this year, you know, the start of the year, and I was like, well, I need to actually sell something. And I'd sold stuff, but it's like this sense of it being sustainable.
The pain of not making enough money became too great for you to continue as you were on social media.
Because I was like also holding back from my own growth. And I think this is where that balance of also saying, but actually I do perhaps want to earn those 10K months, but I don't want to do it sat on my laptop. I want to go do it on a stage somewhere, or, you know, like, so we actually can be creative with with what
Yeah.
we want, but we've got to
Yeah.
say it. We have to be
Yeah.
honest about what we want. So if you're listening, be
Oh, and
honest about what you want.
absolutely. And I think if some of this comes with age. Like oh God, you get to know yourself. You know, when you're a young adult, you're still trying to figure it out and you're still trying to blend in with the tribe to a certain extent and be accepted. And I think adulthood is one great journey of getting to know yourself. You probably finally figure it out when you're sort of 60, 70 and then you puff off. But yeah, it's about being honest about what makes you tick. And I think the thing about entrepreneurship is you do have the opportunity. I mean, some people find this in their careers and that's brilliant and fantastic, but you do have the opportunity to really lean into what you know is going to fulfill you and work in a way that you know is leaning into your strengths. And I think in order to get there, you do have to ask for help. And that's the thing, you know, if you're prepared and you understand that entrepreneurship or solopreneurship, mompreneurship can be really, really lonely, then it's up to you. And this is the thing about all of it. It's all up to you. The accountability, the discipline, everything, the reaching out for help and finding a support network, it's all on you. You rely on yourself, you bet on yourself, you work for yourself, and you reap the benefits that you enjoy yourself. So it's a very autonomous thing. And there's a lot of, you know, it can be very empowering, but it can also be terrifying. And I think we have to get over any fear that we have about asking for support and reaching out to people who've done it and have been where we want to go and asking for that help.
Yeah, I think that ask it and that need for support is so important. And it's invaluable. And I think, you know, if you had kind of gone down a different path, we would end up probably on these paths anyway, because we wouldn't be happy or fulfilled and we'd end up kind of worming our way back. And I meant to ask you this question at the beginning and I didn't, but so I'm going to ask you it now. What was your MBE for? Thought you got away with it.
Yeah, it's like, oh, we've gone over an hour, so she's not going to ask me that.
Could I ask it as the last question?
Yeah. So I mentioned before the charity that I ran with my dad. So around the same time that I set up my photography business, so I studied architecture at uni. Honestly, my working life's been chaos. I studied architecture. I always wanted to be an architect from when I was like 11. And my dad was a builder and it all kind of made sense. But when I got to uni, I realised quite quickly I didn't want to do that. But I saw the degree out and then I went and worked for a year in practice in Liverpool. And that just confirmed that it was absolutely not the right path for me. And then I went to work for my father's business and I still do some marketing for them now. And he had this mad idea. He's brilliant. This mad idea. And he just read an article in a newspaper and it was all about Normandy veterans. And I love history. He is really into history. He's a baby boomer, so World War II, like all of, you know, he grew up on the John Mills films and, you know, obviously his father was in the war. So that was, you know, that was very much in his line of interest. And Normandy veterans were struggling to get funding from the government to go back to France. So these are the D-Day veterans, to go back to France to commemorate the anniversary. And it was the 65th coming up. And there was this letter that had obviously, unfortunately, been sent by some sort of junior clerk in government. And it sent this letter back that got published in a tabloid. And it was like, we don't recognise the 65th as a valid anniversary. However, we will fund the 75th and the 100th. And so all the veterans like, we'll be dead. And so it all blew up in this tabloid instance. And Dad got hold of one of these articles and he was like, I just think maybe we could help. Like, it'd be interesting. And so we got in touch with a local branch of the Normandy Veterans Association, which was the Chester and Wirral branch, which is near to us, and asked them if they were planning a trip and would they like some help. And it kind of just snowballed. So we helped them run a trip back to Normandy for the 65th anniversary. I was like 20, when was that? 23, really young. And then we decided that we really liked doing that. And we started a charity that year called D-Day Revisited. And for the next 11 years, we took World War II veterans back to France for the anniversaries, and we got involved in lots of remembrance stuff at home as well. And we, from 2015, we were the Treasury's main distributor for LIBOR funding, you know, the big LIBOR scandal. So they allocated a certain amount, quite a generous amount of money to World War II veterans who wanted to travel back to the sites where they fought and liberated. So I used to like process all of their grants, and so we deal with veterans of like Holland and Arnhem and Italy and a couple from the Far East that, you know, they go back to Burma and visit the railway. And Yeah, so it was a really fascinating, life enriching, gorgeous journey where I just spent my 20s and early 30s hanging out with Octa nonagenarians.
Wow, that's
Yeah, so
amazing.
yeah, it was a tangent that I didn't expect. And that's like the amazing thing about life is kind of you just keep your eyes open. And I think my dad did it originally thinking my brother would really like it. And then my brother didn't grab onto it the way that I did. So yeah, the MBE, my dad got an MBE just for that, because it was his idea in 2018, 17, 18, he got one. And then for the last trip that we did, so we wrapped up in 2019, which was the 75th anniversary, the one that they had originally promised funding for. And we just wanted to do some extracurricular activities. So my dad restored an old motor anti-submarine boat, like a massive long gunboat. Incredible. He's a very good joiner and he's a very clever engineer. And he just like, got all the old drawings. It's the only one restored in the whole wide world. And he did it. I mean, he did it with some support here and there, but a lot of it, he kind of just laboured and toiled by himself to get it finished. And it was amazing. It took him 3 years. So that's now back on the water, which is very cool. And I did a garden at RHS Chelsea for the Normandy Vets and worked with a sculptor called John Everest, who's up further north than me in the northwest. And yeah, we put together this really beautiful sculpture and garden. It was outside the Royal Hospital Chelsea for RHS Chelsea Flower Show in 2019, and now it's sitting on the cliffs above Gold Beach at Aramonche in Normandy. And
Wow.
it was kind of that triggered mine. So I got mine a year later after that, but it's nominated by the veterans. So
Wow.
it's kind of not, because obviously, sadly, you know, they're not, there's one veteran that is one of our very, very dear friends who is still going. He's in Wallasey. He's 101 just.
God.
And he's amazing. He's amazing and so inspiring. He's one of my favorite people in the whole world. He's got so much energy. And I think I'm so curious about his longevity as well, because he's always invested really heavily in community. He didn't have children and he was very sort of candid and matter of fact about it in a way that we're not these days. Like, oh, it didn't happen for us. Whereas now we're like, it's not happening for us. Let's spend lots of money and drive ourselves crazy trying to make it happen. And that's a generational thing. And he's just very content with everything that's happened in his life, but he's always invested in community. He's always done charity work. He did loads for the RBL. He and his wife established a football club when he got back, and he demobbed and they got married, and that football club's still going, and he has this whole community around him. He's visited by, every day he's got visitors, 8-year-olds who are just getting into football and starting at the club, and he lives at the club. So he's just an incredible character, and it's a testament, I think, to how to have a really rich life. He doesn't have a lot of money, but he's so fulfilled and happy and funny, and he says it like it is, and he's good and charming and hilarious, and yeah, he's just always given, I suppose, and he's always been in service of other people, and so he's beloved, and he's lived a very, very full, rich life. And yeah, so I would say that the whole experience gave a lot more to me than I gave to it, but it's nice to have the gong, I suppose, for the kids as well. And yeah, Alice loves it. She's excited to get it when I die. She said, "Can I have this?"
You're like, well, I'm going to live to 200
I
because
have
of all my
this?
work with community.
Yeah, I'm going to invest in
So,
community and live forever.
It's a natural, anti-aging device. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I could literally talk to you all day. And I feel like this is the beginning of much more support that hopefully, as we build these networks as well, I think there is this sense of collaboration and a new chapter for women and mums, and designing success on our terms with this future of humanity. And I think there's huge value in that. There's a question I always ask everyone that comes on this podcast, and it is, what or who are you when you are thriving? Like, what are you doing when you are truly thriving? I feel like I know the answer to this now, having shared.
Oh, do you want to guess?
So much. Well, no, actually, I won't, because now I think it might be a different answer. So you tell me.
This is the thing. So when I was doing that charity work, when I was in Normandy, we used to go for like a week once a year. That was our main gig. And that was it. I was just completely living in my purpose. I was in service. I was busy as hell. Some of the anecdotes I could tell you about, nonagenarian problems. Oh, he's put his teeth in my drinking water. It's hilarious. God. It was so entertaining, and it was all about friendship, actually, and it was all about community, and it was all about bringing people together. Of course it was about remembrance, but essentially it was about community building. And I think they were some of the happiest times in my life, aside from family, because that I'm talking about kind of in my life as me, not as mum. And I think part of my struggle, and it has been a bit of a struggle just since becoming a mum, is thinking, what's next? I want that feeling again. So it's finding something where you feel like you are, it's finding something where you feel that you are living in your fullest potential, that you're thriving, and all the skills and the talents and the natural, wherever your positive attributes lie, whatever you can offer, it's all coming out and it's being put to good use, and you're feeling fulfilled, you're feeling rewarded, you're having fun. And so I think that's where the podcast kind of comes in, because that was about community and friendship and connection. And so it's going to be an interesting experiment. It won't be exactly the same feeling that I had then, and that was a very special experience. But it'll be something different, and hopefully equally as positive and equally as fulfilling, because I can already kind of feel it. I love these conversations. It's been so fun having this conversation today. And I think it's kind of, I feel a duty to do that, because I want my girls to do that, whatever it is for them. I want them to find that thing where they feel like, right, I'm thriving right now.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. What advice, final bonus question, what advice would that version of you who is thriving give the version of you in this room right now?
Keep looking, because that's what you want. That's the life that you want. You want that feeling. And we're all so different, and it's not a one-size-all thing. And if life teaches you anything, it's that it's fucking complicated. Everyone has got different things that are going to make them tick, and we only have one life. So it's up to you. And this is the entrepreneurial bit. It's up to you. You've got a lot more control over your life than you think. And the way that we're raised is quite prescriptive, and it's also very supportive. Our hand is held all this way, and then suddenly you're, go fly off into the world, and you follow that path, and you're looking behind you. Am I doing it right? Am I doing it right? And actually it's for us to kind of figure out what our best version of ourselves is, and how can we build a working life that leans into that, because we spend a third of our life at work. So how can we make that as fulfilling as it can possibly be for us? And so I would say, I feel like you're on the right track. Finally. It's been painful. It's been really painful. And I think if I can get there, then I'll be a better mum for it as well. And my kids will get a better version of me. And hopefully I can emulate what's possible to them, and that they can find their version too, because that's a new part of our responsibility. It's not just about us. We have to think about how we can, especially daughters. God,
Oh, yeah.
It's hard. But yeah, I'd say keep going. It's all starting to kind of come together.
True freedom. Thank you for sharing that wisdom. That was a real nugget. That alone, I feel like I need to listen to every night before I go to bed.
Oh, God.
And I'm like, thank you so much. And honestly, I could talk to you all day, but I know we need to bring everything to a close. So, Victoria, how can we connect with you? Where can we find you?
Oh, there's all different things on there. So, photography-wise, find me on Instagram, Victoria_Phipps. That's my account anyway, so you can find me there. My website is victoriaphipps.com, and Phipps is PHIPPS. And then for the podcast, it's mummeansbusinesspodcast.com to go to the website. And if you just search on Apple or Spotify, wherever, Mum Means Business. Yep, just Mum Means Business. And come and follow me on Instagram because I've got no followers and I really need some because of my, OCD about Instagram. Yeah, come and find me. It's Mum Means Business Podcast and join in the conversation because, it's starting to get interesting.
It is, and you are developing an amazing community over there, and I think it's just the beginning. And I think if your story and your intuition has told you anything, it's that by following those feelings is what brings those outcomes that really, truly are aligned. Is there anything you'd like to share before we close? Anything else you want to get off your chest?
Well, I'd like to come back. We've got so much to talk about, Kate. Every time I speak to you, we are like, well, let's dig into this, let's dig into that. So I'm going to invite you back on mine and I'm going to come back and talk about something on yours. I just loved it. I think it's great. And I love the honesty and the more conversations about the reality of what all this is like, but also the reward. Because if it was, it's not awful, it's just messy and that's fine. But we're all kind of going at it to have this big, full life that we want. So we can be real about it and honest about it and laugh about it.
Yeah. So
I really want to, of course you've got to laugh. Like, especially as a mum, there are just moments where you're just like, Jesus, how is this all happening at the same time? And it's hilarious, but that's all about solidarity, isn't it? So I just thank you for inviting me on here. I really appreciate it. And hopefully it's the first few conversations of many.
I believe it is. Pardon me, absolutely fully. And I will put all those details so you can go and hound Victoria on social media across the board. Do go check out the podcast. Do go listen to it. There are some amazing guests that she's had on that she will continue to have on that podcast. And I think it's definitely something I'll be still tapping into week by week to help me as well. Because as we say, we're all in this together, stronger together, having a great time, laughing and crying at the same time. But thank you for tuning in. Please don't forget to like and share the podcast episode. If this has resonated with you today, please do what you can. Come follow the podcast at Club Thrive _ and really excited for next week's episode too. Have a great week and we'll speak to you soon. Bye.